It's an interesting matchup for Monday night that involves a team in chaos while the other looks to stay atop the AFC. This is a crossover edition of Locked On Patriots and Locked On Giants.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's happening? I am your host of Locked On Patriots, Nick Cattles, along with the host of Locked On Giants, Patricia Traina, for the latest edition of our Locked On crossovers for the 2025 season. And of course, we are both part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network, your team every day. On today's episode, in the third segment, Patricia and I will tell you how each of these teams can walk away with a primetime W. In the second segment, stick with us to find out which matchups we consider to be marquee. But first, let's talk storylines. Crossover Thursday is presented by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Patricia, this is the first time I've done a show with you, first time I've quote-unquote met you. Hope all is well on this Thanksgiving week. A lot is going on in New York, huh?
Oh, yeah. There's been no shortage of storylines in New York. I think the biggest one, obviously, the new defensive coordinator. Somebody in East Rutherford finally heard me when I said, please fire Shane Bowen. And I feel guilty about saying that, but it had to happen. The Giants defense giving up 5 leads that they took into the fourth quarter in which they had 10 or more points. They were ahead 10 or more points. So after a while, interim head coach Mike Kafka gave Shane Bowen a couple of weeks to kind of figure out, okay, how is the process coming along? What are they doing? Didn't like the results. Shane Bowen is out. Now, what's interesting is that instead of promoting Marquee Manuel, who is the passing game coordinator / defensive backs coach, or Andre Patterson, the defensive line coach, both of whom have had previous defensive coordinator experience, Kafka promoted Charlie Bullen, the outside linebackers coach, who in 18 years of coaching at all levels has never been a play caller. So that is going to be interesting to see what changes he can make. At this point, I mean, it's kind of late in the season. I'm not sure how much he's going to be able to change, but the defense has been letting this team down. I think if the defense holds the lead for at least 4 of those 5 losses that they were responsible for, we're looking at a totally different matchup this week in terms of record and competition level.
Yeah, what were the biggest issues? I mean, we could look at the double-digit leads and the way that they were blown, but to you, especially late in games, what fell short for the Giants defense?
Oh, without doubt, the run defense. I don't know if it's the injuries. I mean, it's interesting. I'm actually in the process of putting together my Wednesday show looking at the run defense, and I suspect it's a combination of injuries, especially at the inside linebacker spot. The Giants lost Micah McFadden way back in week 1, and that's made a difference for sure. But, you get guys, run fits are not happening. The back end of the defense is struggling, so it's not like they can load up and put 8 in the box to stop the run game, because then they expose a defensive secondary that hasn't played well and which has had its own share of injuries. So it's just been a combination of different things, but the run defense is probably the #1 problem. That and, some of the schemes, not scheming guys properly, not utilizing guys to the best of their ability, like Abdul Carter, they're moving him all around instead of letting him hunt. Dropping guys into coverage that shouldn't be dropped into coverage. So it's been a combination of things, but the #1 issue in my mind has been the Giants' run defense.
Well, it's a fascinating story because, of course, it's tied with New England now, with Mike Vrabel being the Patriots head coach. Shane Bowen is a very close friend of his. His defensive coordinator down in Tennessee makes you wonder. I'm sure there's at least a phone call, if not multiple phone calls, being had this week between the two guys to talk about the Giants and what they might try to do. For the Patriots side, the biggest storyline, Patricia, no doubt, is the offensive line now with the health situation and how this is all going to unfold. Of course, in Cincinnati, the Patriots lost both left tackle Will Campbell and left guard Jared Wilson, 2 rookies that have done a pretty good job on the left side. I would say Campbell's been better than Wilson, but up until now, this offensive line has been incredibly healthy. I mean, they started the same offensive line in 11 of 12 games, And of course, we're talking about the left side. So we're talking about Drake Maye's blind side. And Drake Maye is close with Will Campbell. They hang out away from the football field. So it'll be interesting to see how, Maye responds to this challenge, because he's always had his guy there at left tackle and Jared Wilson at left guard. And, looking at this matchup specifically, this might be one of the worst times to lose two starting offensive linemen the week before a game when you got to play against the Giants. And that D-line, a very tough matchup to lose both guys in Cincinnati to now move forward and play Monday night against Abdul Carter and Brian Burns in that pass rush and Dexter Lawrence in the middle. I know, the one thing the Giants have been able to do is get at the quarterback, and they've been able to get after the quarterback pretty quickly when they do. How you look at this pass rush and you look at this offensive line matchup for the Patriots, I feel like there's going to be some opportunity for the Giants.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if the Giants are going to do anything on defense, that's where they've got to attack. They've got to take advantage of that injury-riddled offensive line of the Patriots. Brian Burns didn't have a sack last week, but, he's been red hot all year long. Abdul Carter is still kind of feeling his way around. And, we didn't mention Kayvon Thibodeaux because he's been out with a shoulder injury. So we don't know if he's going to play or not. But that's a fearsome threesome right there. And then you throw in Dexter Lawrence, who still is drawing double teams. And, a lot of people say, well, why doesn't Dexter have the numbers he has last year? He's drawing double teams on a regular basis. And just unfortunately this year, because he doesn't have another guy to kind of take some of that onus off of him, he's getting neutralized. But the double teams are allowing Burns and the other guys to get in there and do their thing.
It sounds similar to, what Christian Barmore brings to the table for the Patriots in that interior defensive line. He drew 19 doubles against Cincinnati on Sunday, and that hopefully opens up opportunity for other places, which I'll show we'll get into. But, it'll be fascinating to see the level of comfort for Drake Maye, if he has any level of comfort on Monday night against the Giants with those two guys missing. Vederian Lowe is expected to be the left tackle. We'll see if that changes. They do have Marcus Bryant, who they drafted in the 7th round. He is a natural left tackle. He played left tackle at Missouri while Armand Membu played right tackle. But for the most part, since he's been with the Patriots, Marcus Bryant has been training and practicing on the right side. So it's likely going to be Vederian Lowe and Ben Brown on the left side. And of course, when you talk about having an offensive line with 11 of the 12 games starting the same 5, you talk about a chemistry. And O-line coaches and former offensive linemen in the league will tell you how crucial chemistry is for a front 5. So to lose 2 guys out of the mix, it'll be a fascinating matchup and story heading into Monday night. All right, trench warfare. We just talked about it a little bit. Well, we'll talk more about it next as we continue with this crossover episode of Locked On Patriots and Locked On Giants. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The NBA, it's back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. You always have a shot to enjoy the game and the action. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. I love same game parlays. I've had my share of wins using that SGP icon. Maybe you like Jalen's points, rebounds, and assists. You can look to combine all of them to get a better and bigger payday. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Again, FanDuel giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, thanks for making Locked On Patriots and Locked On Giants your first listen of the day. And thank you for making Locked On the number one sports podcast network, your team every day. And if you're watching Locked On Patriots on YouTube or Locked On Giants, don't forget to help us out, brother and a sister out here with our podcast by giving us a thumbs up. Hit that like button. Don't forget to comment as well. Your thoughts on this matchup coming up on Monday night, and subscribing will always help us. Patricia Traina with me here. A Locked On Patriots, Locked On Giants crossover episode for you this week, getting you ready for Monday Night Football while you eat the turkey over the weekend. Patricia, some interesting matchups coming up on Monday Night Football. Which one stands out to you the most?
Well, we talked about it a little bit in the first segment, the Giants pass rush against the Patriots offensive line. But here's the one I'm not sure on because disclaimer, we're recording this a little earlier than usual. It's actually a Tuesday night. So the injury reports haven't come out yet, but I'm curious to see what happens with Jaxson Dart, the Giants quarterback. Now, Jaxson Dart was on track to play last week, but didn't clear the concussion protocol. He missed his second game. And of course, Jameis Winston went in and we all got to experience the Jameis Winston experience, which was a lot of fun, I have to say. So as of this recording, excuse me, I don't know if Jaxson Dart is going to play. I think he will. I know I said that last week, but hopefully he'll be able to play. And what I'm going to be interested in seeing is how is he going to respond to that Vrabel defense? Because they do a lot of disguising and things to fool young quarterbacks. Jaxson Dart has been pretty good with all that stuff thus far, but some of these more sophisticated defenses and stuff like that, just how is he going to fare with all that stuff? And especially, he hasn't played the last, couple of games. So I don't want to say he's going to be rusty, but that's something to keep an eye on because I do think the Patriots will try to fool him by just doing a little bit more disguising, maybe a little bit more in terms of stunts and fancy stuff that, just anything to rattle a young guy.
Yeah, and of course, when we talk about concussions, it's a serious injury and it's so unpredictable. A lot of people thought that Jaxson Dart would play last week, and obviously he didn't. For Patriots fans who might not have been able to watch a lot of Jaxson Dart, obviously we've seen Jameis Winston in the league for a long time, but compare the two quarterbacks, Patricia, if you could, for Patriots fans. What are the main differences that you see from Jaxson Dart when you compare him to a Jameis Winston?
I think Jaxson Dart's a little less reckless with the ball. Jameis Winston, look, he could be a fun quarterback to watch, and he was last week, but he also takes some risks and he puts some balls out there that shouldn't be thrown, and he can frustrate you because it's like, oh man, where are you going with that ball? The other, concern, I guess, and we kind of saw this a couple weeks ago when he made his first start, the chemistry with the receivers. Now, you got to remember, going back to training camp, Jameis Winston did not work with the first team offense. He did not work with the second team offense. He was penciled in as the third string quarterback. So getting up to speed with those guys in terms of chemistry. And now, he's seeing guys, we don't have Malik Neighbors in this game, obviously. So he's seeing guys that maybe he started to work a little bit with in training camp. So he's getting caught up. But the big difference, I think, is in terms of, Jameis, I think, is a little bit more of a daredevil. Also, I will say that Jameis is maybe not as athletic as he once was as compared to Dart. Dart is not afraid to take off with the ball. He's not afraid to lower his shoulder and try and pick up the extra yards, which is kind of how we got into this situation to begin with.
Right.
So, you've got that youthful moxie, if you will, that Jaxson Dart brings to the table. And Jameis is more of a smooth type of, mellow type of quarterback who just goes out there, has fun, and, let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah, Jameis Winston is quite the personality. We talked about it last segment, Patricia. I won't spend too much time on it here, but I do think Vederian Lowe, who is likely going to be the left tackle on Monday night against Abdul Carter, is a very interesting matchup. With Vederian Lowe, you have the typical highs and lows of a backup left tackle. He did start for this team last year. He has over 1,000 snaps at left tackle, so he's an experienced guy. But he does have some rough patches, and I think it's going to be a tough speed matchup for Vederian Lowe on Monday night. So that's going to be something where, if Abdul Carter can get going and Drake Maye's not trusting his left tackle, that could shake, that could rattle Drake Maye a little bit. And we saw Maye against Cincinnati, for whatever reason, he got off to a very bad start. He did look a little bit shaky against the Bengals defense that had been absolutely awful heading into that game. And I'm sure they will be awful for the rest of the season. So, we'll see what kind of Maye we get on Monday night, given the offensive line situation. All right, another matchup that might keep you interested on Monday, Patricia.
Well, I'm always curious to see how the run defense does. I mean, they haven't figured it out yet. I'm hoping that Charlie Bullen and the defensive staff figure out how to plug these leaks. I mean, the Giants have been very susceptible on the edges, in particular the defense's left side. So that would be the offense's right side.
Right.
A lot of the big runs, if you go back and you look at, the stats and the tape, they're coming from that side. And I'm not really sure why that side has been so leaky as opposed to the other side. But, again, they've got to button down on that, get these guys to funnel things inside so that the linebackers can maybe have a shot at stemming the tide, maybe bring the safeties down a little bit in the box. Now, I know that exposes the cornerbacks who, again, a shaky situation back there, but they've got to stop the run in order for that pass rush to take advantage of the injuries on the Patriots offensive line.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic to hear you talk about the run defense and the Patriots run defense. We'll talk about this a little bit more, I'm sure, in the next segment about 3 keys to victory. Patriots run defense was one of the best, arguably the best run defense in the entire NFL for the first 9 weeks. They've had some major slippage the last 3 weeks, especially last week against Cincinnati without Milton Williams, and then they lost Kyrie's Tonga, one of their other really good interior defensive linemen. But when I look at the Patriots in another matchup that is interesting to me, it's Kayvon Chaisson versus Andrew Thomas. Now, another kind of comparison, another, I would guess similarity, listening to what you just said, is teams run at Kayvon Chaisson. They will run to that edge. So, again, right side defense, left side offensive line. And whether it's Kayvon Chaisson or his backup Elijah Ponder, offenses are running. They're funneling the run action towards Kayvon Chaisson. And, can Chaisson win? And can Chaisson also win against Thomas with the pass rush? Because Harold Landry, ever since the game at Tennessee, where he got rolled up on, he was on the injury report last week with a knee. He has not been close to the same guy he was the first 4 or 5 weeks. He got off to a great start, but he has not been the same guy. So if the Patriots pass rush has any hope on Monday night, it's going to probably be looking at Kayvon Chaisson to give it a little bit of juice. So if he loses that matchup against Andrew Thomas consistently on Monday night, it's going to be difficult for the Patriots to get to the quarterback, no matter if it's Jameis Winston or Jaxson Dart.
And good luck on that, because it just so happens Andrew Thomas is the best offensive lineman the Giants have.
Yep.
And it's interesting because we spoke with Andrew Thomas on Tuesday on a video call, and Andrew Thomas says, I'm still not playing at the level I know I can play at. Well, he's been pretty good. I mean, for the most part, he has shut down that side. So, will the Giants take advantage of that matchup? Possibly. They tend to run more to the right side behind tackle Jermaine Illuminor on that right tackle side. And that's, where you see the tight end a lot of times. But, Andrew Thomas, he's been doing a really, really good job in terms of the run blocking, in terms of pass pro. He's just, the old Andrew Thomas is pretty much back. He'll say he's not back, but like I said, he is the best offensive lineman the Giants have. And the offensive line in general, the Giants offensive line in general, which has been an Achilles heel, it's actually been pretty good, this season. I don't think we're talking enough about that offensive line. The interior's playing a little bit better. The tackles are playing well. They've been able to run the ball the last couple of weeks, and not just, little runs here and there, but we're talking decent sized runs. The pass pro has been good. So, I mean, that's been a really nice development for the Giants in a season that's otherwise just been an absolute disaster.
And it could be, it could be a spot where the Giants offensive line will take advantage of a Patriots defensive line. Again, that's not going to have Milton Williams. Harold Landry has not been the same guy. He's been dinged up. Kyrie's Tonga, we'll see if he plays. As Patricia said, we're recording this on Tuesday night, so we're not really sure about the injury reports just yet, but Kyrie's Tonga left the game last weekend with a chest injury, went back in, could not stay in, had to leave. So, he might not be a go. And then you've got Chaisson against Thomas, which could be a little bit of a mess for the Patriots. So the New York Giants offensive line might have an opportunity to eat against a Patriots D-line, missing some guys, and also, frankly, just tired. I mean, they've played now 12 straight games. This will be their 13th straight game with the bye week 14, and they looked a little bit run down against the Cincinnati Bengals last weekend. So this could be a great matchup for the Giants. All right, we've got keys to victory coming up next on today's crossover episode of Locked On Patriots and Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, so as we get ready to wrap up Giants, Patriots, Monday Night Football, crossover edition, gobble gobble for your turkey day. Patricia Traina with Nick Cattles here. Glad you could join us as always here with the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's run through some keys to victory. Patricia, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I'm most concerned about the Giants' defensive secondary against the Patriots passing game. That's one of my top concerns. I mean, the Giants, they have injuries back there. I mentioned Paulson Adebo may not play. He had a setback, I think, a couple weeks ago. Hasn't played since. I think he's in danger of missing his 6th or 7th game now. Deonte Banks, I don't know if he's going to play, but even if he does, he hasn't been very good at all. Very inconsistent despite the talent. So that basically leaves them with Cor'Dale Flott, who has been decent on that one corner slot there. And on the other side, you're probably going to see a combination of Nick Jones and Corey Black, two guys who are relatively inexperienced. Corey Black is a rookie. Nick Jones, is more of a special teamer. So the cornerbacks against the Patriots receivers, that would be a concern for me. And then, of course, I'm going to keep going back to it. The run defense is a concern for me as well. I mean, they haven't been able to stop the bleeding, and I'm just not sure run fit scheme or whatnot. So they're going to have to do something, whether they, pull stunts or do slide or whatever they have to do, but they've got to figure out a way to do that, because right now they're not able to really capitalize on the strength, which is their pass rush.
Yeah, I mean, I would say to Giants fans, and I would say to you, Patricia, if you're going to try to get your run defense right, the team you want to face is the Patriots. They've been pretty bad running the football. They went against the Cincinnati Bengals defense last week. Again, one of the worst defenses in football, one of the worst. And you could argue, and I would make the argument, the worst run defense in football. The Giants and them are kind of battling. But Cincinnati, gave up just a ton in the run game heading into that game last weekend, and the Patriots could do nothing. Ramondre Stevenson had 6 carries for 5 yards. Travion Henderson had 18 carries for 66 yards. They had 6 snaps from the 1-yard line and could not find the end zone. Their red zone offense was embarrassing, frankly, against Cincinnati. So if, the run defense happens to be the biggest weakness for the Giants, the Patriots might not be able to do anything against them anyway on the ground, which is kind of crazy. And I know a lot of people from, outside of New England might not be paying close attention. They probably saw the 2 big runs by Travion Henderson against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And then, of course, he had 3 touchdowns against the Jets. But, it's big player busts for Travion Henderson so far for the most part. And Ramondre, I don't know how healthy he is. Again, he only played 6 snaps against Cincinnati. Well, ran the ball 6 times against Cincinnati. Travion Henderson had, more than 65% of the snaps against the Bengals, and that was not the split before Stevenson hurt his toe. So, I have little confidence. Almost zero, that the Patriots will be able to run the football on Monday night, even against this Giants defense. The wide receivers that you mentioned, interesting. Stephon Diggs is kind of the guy on 3rd down, and I think you're trying to get rid of the football quickly if you're Drake Maye against this Giants front. And, you're probably going to be looking at 3rd and medium, 3rd and long, which has been the case for a lot of this season because of the run game. So, I wonder, and I ask you, of course, it's a new defensive coordinator this week, but how aggressive do you think the Giants will be going after Drake Maye, or will they kind of rely on their front 4? Because I watched the Detroit Lions tape, and it seemed like they didn't blitz too much. It seemed like they were pretty comfortable relying on 4. Sometimes they put 5 defensive linemen down. Do you think they'll be, aggressive against the Patriots?
I don't think that they can, again, because of the problems in the defensive secondary.
Yeah,
I think they're going to have to get home with 4. I mean, if they had a better defensive secondary, I'd say, yeah, go after him, go after Drake Maye with all you got, but he'll burn them. And, to your point, just to double back real quick about the Patriots running game, the Eagles came in against the Giants. They got their running game right. I forget who the other team was, but a couple teams this season have gotten their running games right against the Giants' run defense. So to the Patriot fans out there, if you're waiting for a big rushing game, this could be it.
Oh, there's some hope.
There's some hope.
There's some hope for Monday night. Protecting Drake Maye against that defensive line will be crucial. We talked about that. And really, my final point is just, do the Patriots have enough gas in the tank on Monday night? They got off to a very slow start against Cincinnati after a mini bye, following their Thursday night football game against the Jets. They did not have a lot of energy to start that game. And Cincinnati, they allowed Cincinnati to hang around. Drake Maye was off throwing the football. He was, spraying it early on, very inaccurate. Run game couldn't get going. Defensively, they gave up 100+ rushing yards for the first time this year. So, you start to look at it and you wonder, they're kind of limping towards the bye week, and the Giants might be getting them at the perfect time where they're just kind of worn down and banged up. And so it'll be an interesting game. It'll be a very interesting game. Of course, look, we're recording this thing on Tuesday night. There's no way on God's green earth that Patricia nor I am going to give you a game prediction 6 days before the game, especially when we don't have any idea what the injury report is going to look like. But Patricia, I guess I'll ask you to wrap this up. What's the general vibe around the Giants, and how do you feel going into Monday night? How do you think they feel going into Monday night?
Well, like the Patriots, the Giants haven't had their bye week yet, so they're limping into this game as well. They're worn out. I mean, the losing is kind of wearing on some of those guys, obviously, but the hope is that with a change in defensive coordinator, maybe there will be a spark. But the Giants, for whatever reason, they rarely do well in primetime. I don't know what it is. They haven't done well in primetime in years. Now, this year, they beat the Eagles in week 6 in what was basically the team's Super Bowl, if you will. I don't know what it is. And, are these guys going to be looking ahead to say, okay, you know what? We got the bye coming up. We need it. We're tired. We just need to come back and refresh and then finish out, the stretch in which they have 3 of their final 4 games is going to be against NFC opponents, 2 of which will be in the division. So I think the vibe is, look, we're just going to keep on plugging away. Some guys will. I think some guys, I don't know if some guys are checked out. I would like to think that's not the case, but, there's really at this point, and I hate to say this because I've always found this kind of, like almost like loser talk, but the only thing left for the Giants to play for is pride and their jobs. They've been mathematically eliminated from the postseason. Not that they had a chance at the postseason, but mathematically they are officially out. So they're going to be playing for jobs for whoever the next head coach is that comes in here, to show him that they belong on the team.
Yeah, it's 2 teams that are in interesting spots in different ways. Mike Vrabel called the team out a little bit, somewhat cryptically, after the Cincinnati game, talking about practice. And, it certainly sounded like Vrabel was implying that some guys did not have a good week of practice, and maybe the mini bye kind of messed with them a little bit mentally. Long win streak, a 9-game win streak now. Maybe they started to smell their own roses after beating the New York Jets on Thursday Night Football. So I think that was a message from Vrabel to get these guys, to try to get them to focus, to kind of run through the tape and finish this 1 week off before you get to that bye. So we'll see which team shows up with more life, because we just previewed 2 teams that might be absolutely worn down, which could result in a bad Monday Night Football game. Hopefully not. That wraps up this crossover edition of Locked On Patriots and Locked On Giants. Thank you for making us your first listen, for being an everydayer. Don't forget to throw a comment in on the YouTube channel. Hit that like button and subscribe. For your second listen, get a double dose of the Locked On NFL podcast with Tyler the Madman Rowland and Tony Wiggins. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. For Patricia Traina, I am Nick Cattles. Have a fantastic Thanksgiving, and we will see you next time.